So I'm joined now by Ten Broeke, who is the member of the House of Representatives of the States General from the Liberal Party for Freedom and Democracy in the Netherlands. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ilene. That's very accurate.
Sorry, I wanted to make sure I got your title correctly. Now, tell me about the panel that you are speaking on today that I find very interesting. I know that it's on global power and Middle East security. If you would be willing to give us a little bit of an extract of the message that you want to get across to this audience.
Okay, well, the subject, you have it right. I think it's also the greater subject of this conference. I'm not quite sure whether we will be dealing mostly with the regional powers here, so it will be mostly Iran, Egypt, stability in Egypt, what do we expect in Lebanon, how do we see Jordan at this moment, or it will be the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. As far as I'm concerned, I can see that from an Israeli point of view, that Palestine conflict, which is very much always high on the agenda for Europeans, is much lower on the agenda here. And I agree with the Israeli point of view, but I will be speaking on both topics, I guess. And I think Iran, of course, is on all our minds. It was very interesting to hear this morning the scenario that was played out on what would happen if there would be a Saudi-Iran-US deal on the nuclear arms program. So my main message would be that we get one, that we really get a deal. And I know that there is a difference between Israel and for example, the European community, part of the P5+1, that we feel we really have to go for a second deal, a more comprehensive deal, in order to push back the breakout time for Iran for producing a nuclear weapon.
Now, you were saying just now that you agree with the Israeli viewpoint more on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I just wanted to understand where you were coming from in terms of the latest developments with Fatah and Hamas having a unity government. Overall, the EU's policy has been that it will recognize and speak to that government. Do you differ from the general EU policy on that matter?
I'm afraid I do, to a certain extent. I feel that we should be very careful and not be too naive about this, which is of course a common trait in Europe, that we are easily very naive. I mean, many Europeans feel that this whole conflict could be solved with a therapeutical session and a cup of tea, and that I think is, when you're here, you know that Israel is surrounded not by friends, at best with stable partners, and not even that is secure. Look at what's happening in Lebanon, look at what's happening in Syria at the moment. On the other hand, I feel that there is an enormous urgency that Israel finally does cling a deal, and I think time is not on your side. I think the regional situation actually plays into the hands of those who would like to see the upcoming and the uprise of Islamic fundamentalism. But as a general note, I feel that the unity government that we now see between Hamas and Fatah, well, let's first see whether it holds. The last two attempts at that, I think, held for 2 weeks or so. And it should entail what we call the Quartet principles, which is basically that Hamas then has to deliver on a couple of promises that they've never made: recognizing the state of Israel, renouncing violence. They should also hand over the security apparatus, and I don't see any of those things happening. So we take a wait-and-see approach, but I'm very skeptical about what will happen.
Just one question about what's been happening in Europe in the last 2 weeks or so. A lot of people in Israel have been very concerned to see what happened out of the European parliamentary elections. What's your take on that outcome and what impact it's going to have in the year to come?
I think, well, the European elections, so interesting that you asked me. I was a campaign manager for the European election myself, for my party. It's a very interesting election because, for example, in the Netherlands we've seen that populism on the right has been defeated a little bit, and we've only seen this happening in Finland and in the Netherlands. Well, we saw the opposite happening in France, for example. I think this election and the result will mean that we have a very hung European Parliament. I think the European Parliament has the aspiration to do a lot more, but they should understand that they should actually do less and they should do it better. I'm very skeptical about what will happen in the upcoming 5 years. That is the term for the European Parliament, and I think the European Council, which consists of the various governments of the 28 member states, they should take the lead. on a very convincing program on economy, on jobs, because that's what we need, and we don't need a lot of more of regulation from the European community.
Okay, Han-ten Broeke from the Netherlands, thank you so much for joining us on TLV1.
Thank you, Ilene, and I was happy to be on.